each one of the combinations was a different network or feed. So, you know, just sitting there, I start playing with the buttons and pulling up Mutual and NBC and all this and Peach and, you know, whatever else was on there. Everything was on there. And then I started going, punching buttons. This is all going down the gravestone.
Oh my God.
Truman Connolly from Savannah calls, the hotline rings, and he says, "What the are you doing?" Mutual, man! So, well, like I said, okay, so we got 4 of us, so it's going to be a discussion, not a presentation.
Did he call and ask if you played B-17 for him?
Yeah. And, well, I had to go down. We were trying to sign him as an affiliate, and the next week I had to go down to Savannah to make a presentation. And when I get into the conference room, the tables are pushed to the side, and there is a horseshoe-shaped row of chairs with one chair in the middle.
Boy.
So what I learned from that moment was speak first. Don't wait for people to come after you.
Be preemptive.
That's true. So, okay, well, I'm about to, this is 45 minutes of what I've learned doing this. So this is about cybersecurity. Okay, Gainesville, Salem, who are you all with? Rome? Cool.
Columbus, Georgia, Holly Stewart, WT.
Excellent. So we have TV here also. And TV was making a lot of headlines in the past 7 days.
Yes.
So this will touch on that a little bit. And Rome, are you with the group?
Yes, Rome Radio Partners.
How about that? Well, Rome is dear to my heart from the Mike and the Mike McDougal days, and you know, knew it well. Sanders, Richard, and we have Brunswick. Okay, now we're getting critical mass here. We have a quorum. Okay, so we're gonna, and since it's just us, you know, feel free to share experiences if you have them, or questions, you know, either way. We're going to talk about cybersecurity, and we're going to focus as much as possible on broadcast. The number of people who came up to me yesterday proved to me that there are broadcasters who know more about this than I do because of what they have been through, and an awful lot of broadcasters have been through this. My name is Richard Warner. I had a long career in radio, started at SB, was the first news director at GRINS, Georgia Radio News Service, which became Georgia News Network. I did Good Day Atlanta for 10 years and had a interview program on GPB for 30 years where I interviewed CEOs for a half hour at a ran on Friday nights after Wall Street Week. I owned an interactive agency for 25 years, and my cybersecurity experience has been because I emceed cyber summits around the country, not because I knew a lot about cybersecurity, but because I was comfortable in front of a crowd. And when I interviewed the head of that company, she said, "I need you to do this for me because I can't do it." And so for many years, particularly at the beginning when cyber was not an issue, I learned over the years what these professionals were dealing with and kind of turned that into a business. The company that I created is called AwareForce, and AwareForce is a twice-a-month cybersecurity newsletter for employees. It's branded for the company, so I create a master and I copy it and then I customize it to whatever degree that the customer wants. And it's bigger than I ever thought it would be. It's a guy, these customers have no idea that it's a guy in Canton, Georgia, in his office. Regions, Synovus, Georgia Pacific, Chicago Public Schools, we have calls next week. They contacted us from Allstate and Coke. So there's clearly a market. People are concerned about what's going on. Because of this, since the pandemic, with people working out of their house, the number of attempted breaches has skyrocketed. That first slide blew me away, that the amount of money attributed to cybercrime in 2021 will be bigger than global e-commerce spending. It's insane, and it's getting worse. So almost 800% in whatever, 18 months or so.
Is that because there's more vulnerabilities to your networks via all this remote access?
It's a combination of, that's called the attack surface. And the attack surface, that is the number of places that crooks can get in, is expanding because people are working out of their houses.
Right.
More to the point, it's because it's working. It is so crazy profitable and effective that you, as you will see, there are three groups of people, three groups that are doing this, and all of them are dramatically ramping up their capabilities and their intent. And as a result, you can always look at a place like this. There's a insurance guy. He's kind of like me in that he did not start in cyber, but he sort of got pulled into it. Ralph Pastorello with Snelling's Walters is emerging as a really credible cybersecurity insurance guy. And I talked to him yesterday for this. I said, what's going on, Ralph? And he said, well, that's one thing that's going on. The rates are going up. They're becoming much smarter about what to exclude and how to write the contracts. And the problem is that the CFOs and the CEOs who are signing to buy the insurance don't know what they're signing. They're dramatically underestimating what they think they need. They think that it's, I got $1 million in cybersecurity insurance. Well, the average, it takes 25 days on average to recover once a breach is discovered, and that they are in your system on average 100 days, moving around and doing stuff bad before you discover it.
Wow.
And that number has not come down. It has always been around 100 days. That's from IBM.
Who sells cyber insurance?
All the big companies sell
They do.
cyber insurance.
So a business policy that we might have for our companies.
You know, business interruption insurance does not cover cyber. If you get shut down because you got hacked and you're thinking, oh, your CFO says, well, we have business interruption insurance and this is interruption. And your insurance company's going to say, no, you know, you know what you're selling. Know what you're
So
buying.
you request that over and above what your policy provides.
And they are setting so many restrictions, this according to Ralph, that the most coverage you can get from one carrier is 50% of what you need. Not only are there exclusions, there are significant limitations in the amount of payout. And this is fun for me. You have to have an active, ongoing cybersecurity program in place. He said if you don't have two-factor authentication, and everybody knows what that is, where you get the code on your phone. If you don't have that in place, you cannot get cyber insurance. So those are some of the basic things that'll, it's shocking to me that how many companies don't do this basic hygienic stuff.
So they are wanting 2FA like in your building on
Everywhere you
computers?
can get, it depends on what you use, what access do your employees of your workforce have to outside platforms.
Okay, so
That
like
could
coming
be-
into a VPN or something.
A VPN, you know, there are some VPNs that are reliable, there are some VPNs that are run by hackers.
Yep.
So, you know, we're getting smarter about it. Hackers are smart, but we're getting smart too. So, you know, part of this is dealing with people who deal with this. I'm amazed at the wisdom that's coming out of here in the last year because so many broadcasters have had to go through this and learn the hard way about touching the stove. So, Cox got hacked. We knew it because we had friends, but most of America didn't know Cox got hacked. It was devastating to 80%. In fact, a lot of the folks who are here have been hacked and haven't made a public announcement about it. In Washington, Congress doesn't do anything, but there is talk that there's going to at some point be a national requirement that if you are a certain size, you must disclose, in some cases within 24 hours. And cyber experts will say that's a horrible idea. It looks great on paper, horrible idea, because you don't know in 24 hours what your problem is. So this is still squishy. Europe is ironclad. Europe is a different culture than the United States. Europe has, across the EU, very strict requirements that we can only dream of. My business is employee engagement. 85% of breaches involve an employee, biggest part of your attack surface. What can we do? You can do a lot. And 40% involve people who are malicious, who are doing this because they don't like you when they quit, or they are getting money somewhere. And that's why, as you will see, one of the things that you need is a written cyber policy that every employee gets upon onboarding. We'll talk about that. What's behind all this? Just like Deep Throat, everything we're talking about here is about money, and the money is enormous, as Sinclair will attest. This is new. This is within the last week, and it disturbed me to no end to read the details about this. This was from CompareTech, which is a cybersecurity company. One of the three groups that does cyber hacking is individuals who make money by getting hired to hack on behalf of someone else. And you can hire these people on the dark web to do your bidding if you're really out for blood for a competitor or somebody you don't like. The most expensive personal attacks, these are varying channels that someone can hire a bad guy to go after you, pay $500, and this is all automated. It's SaaS, it's software as a service. They're not reinventing the wheel every time they do this. And here is where most of that money goes. Social media, because it's the Wild West, is a very effective place for hackers to do their bidding. I have a story coming up that will demonstrate that. Social media is one way for you to get impersonated, and it's also another way to trick your employees into providing a different information of value. Particularly, I learned this from a hacker, one of the most dangerous tools that a hacker can use is when an employee posts a picture of the office on Facebook and there's a computer in the background. And they can see what you're working on. They can see stuff you don't want out there. So this is kind of what you're up against. So I mentioned one of the first takeaways is there are three groups of hackers. Here is Tom Noonan. Tom Noonan is brilliant. He co-founded Internet Security Systems, sold it with Chris Klaus for $2 billion to IBM. It is the foundation of IBM security now. This is Tom. I talked to him at a TAG meeting. And he's talking about the first of the three types of attackers. This is nation state. So this is what's going to go after the Republican and Democratic national committees. It's the power grid, the whatever. But here's Tom.
Increasingly, the North Koreans and their operatives are focused on cryptojacking and cryptocurrency theft, ransomware, etc., because the hermit nation has been cut off from the rest of the world, and they have the only currency they can bring in is cryptocurrency. So they're the best at cryptojacking, and they've been very successful at it. The Chinese, on the other hand, tend to focus on theft of intellectual property. The Chinese also think about the very long tail of cyber operations, including using backdoors in U.S. infrastructure that can be utilized at a time in the future if necessary, to gain access to our systems. The Russians are very into influence operations, so social media, poisoning our minds with things that are not necessarily true, fabricated by them. The Iranians tend to be some of the best in the world at hacking the operational technology infrastructure, the systems that operate our water, power, transportation, the control systems and PLCs. And so, you know, this world is all connected to this internet, and the nation state actors are something that we have to be very, very conscious of because they're at the top of their game.
So we have three groups. We have the nation states. China employs more than 100,000 hackers full-time to go after the United States. You have individuals who are available for hire, and then you have organized crime, which is not only in the U.S., it's also overseas, and is purely financially motivated, unlike nation states with their political priorities. Organized crime is here to steal the most money possible. So we're going to talk about, as much as possible, narrow this down for broadcast. You're the perfect target for so many reasons. High-profile business. Hacking on Sinclair is going to get, it's just press for the hackers. All press is good press. You are, many of you are, profitable, significantly profitable. A television station in a major market that does 30, 40, $50 million a year and has profit margins of 20, 30, 40%, that's a lot of money if you can get your hands on some of it. The product is real time, so the stakes are incredibly high. It's not like as much as shipping and receiving and that can get hacked and is. Broadcast is if you get hacked, you're hosed today. You have to deal with it right now because every minute that goes by is going to cost you significant dollars. Many points of failure. Think about all of the different systems that it takes to run a broadcast operation, whether we were talking about Marketron. The commercial systems that go into place, the automation to broadcast the programming. Look at Sinclair, last weekend, unable to broadcast NFL games in some markets. Newsroom, all of the ways that your news employees or your other employees communicate back to the mothership, and the way that you connect to your mothership. And this then leads back to historically a resistance of spending a lot of money, a lot of CapEx on cybersecurity, because you can't prove it. Success is when nothing happens. So when you're trying, an IT person is trying to make their case to the VPGM, and they're saying we need this, and some of the questions that come back legitimately are, why do we need this? How are we going to know if the money we're spending is worth it or just being thrown away? How do we know? Well, you'll know. You'll know when you don't. 3 ways inside your station. And we're going to talk mostly about number 1, because number 2 and number 3 are kind of above my pay grade. Lack of strategic defense means that your organization did not spend the money specifically on hardening its perimeters. And of course, cybersecurity business is very healthy. Lots of different solutions, lots of good ones, some mediocre ones. And has the investment been made over time to recognize that this is a problem? And the third one is outdated software. I love all my customers. I have a large bank in LA, San Diego, that uses Internet Explorer. They said, your product's not displaying the way we thought it would. And I was like, well, okay, maybe I screwed up. What are you viewing it on? And he said, well, we're going to upgrade in a few months, but this is a bank, crazy, absolutely crazy stuff. So this number 2 and number 3, or your IT people know where do you stand on this? Number one is employees of the company, including management, I might add. Management is often more ineffective at dealing with cybersecurity than employees are. Phishing, we'll start with phishing. Phishing is emails, texts, and calls. Texts are growing at a faster clip than emails. The calls, we need you to make this deposit right away. We need you to do this right away. Caught me last week. I mean, I've been this all night. Call shows up on my phone, 800 number, Georgia Power.
Oh,
I don't have Georgia Power, by the way. But I was still, the message, of course, automated was, we're gonna cut off your power in 15 minutes if you don't pay us.
Yeah.
We've tried to contact you, we've been unable. Well, I used my tool to look it up, and it is Georgia Power's number.
yeah.
And this same thing happened to Georgia Pacific. Georgia Pacific employees getting phone calls from Georgia Pacific numbers in the database of management saying, you gotta do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's spoofing. And when I got the kindly elderly woman on the phone at Georgia Power, because that's who their operators are, that's their demo, she said, oh honey, that's been spoofed. And it's like, yeah, and I do this for a living. So it's everywhere. This is a video that we produced for clients. Phishing is the most important thing to every client. So in July and August, we did a thing about phishing in every edition. This is a video to describe what phishing is, just in case you don't know. Here's a fish. We can do this all day, but yeah, seems good.
It said don't unsubscribe.
Don't unsubscribe.
Right. I can't tell you how many times I get tired of seeing an email from some place that just is obnoxious, it keeps showing up. And it looks legit,
Yeah.
right? And I just think, if I don't receive this anymore, I have hit unsubscribe.
Well, if it's a legitimate company,
But
how do you tell? I'll tell you how to
how
tell.
do you tell whether they're legitimate?
I'll tell you how to tell.
Okay.
So you can hit unsubscribe if it's a legitimate company. And by law, they have to take you off. I do a lot of email marketing and I get an unsubscribe. It's a priority because I can get fined for every email I send that is unsolicited. That put me out of business. All right, this is just, and your questions, your timing is fine. This is just a typical phishing email. A zillion of them. And so take a minute if you can read it. What are the clues? What are the clues that this email is fake, and that if you click unsubscribe, they're just going to know that Sanders' email is active and Sanders is reading it.
The sending email address?
Spam that.
Okay? Grammar and spelling.
Misspelling?
So always, I mean, the clue, if you really want to know what is this a legitimate email? And I just got another one. I got an alert from Facebook, and it was real, but I was like, yeah, really. Always look at the email address between the carets, not the email address that it came from.
Yeah.
Apparently, because they can make that say anything they want. Look at this one, and then look for things like the letter 1 or a nonsensical address, or I mean the really tricky ones use Cyrillic, although that's not as common as it used to be, because a Cyrillic O looks like an English O, but it's not an English O. So that they try and be really sneaky about it, but there are a lot of other clues, and yes, misspellings, urgency is almost always, you got to do this or something terrible is going to happen or something's great is going to happen, but you got to do it right now. And to add credibility, these links go to the Microsoft areas, web pages, URLs that you would expect. This one does not. And it will take you to a website that does not say Microsoft.com. So if you can teach your employees to look at that clue, that's something that scammers can't, at least not yet, they can't change. So that's your clue. Now, everybody in this room could conceivably be a victim of something more insidious than a spray and pray phishing email, which is what that other one was. Spear phishing is where they go to the trouble to find out who you are, a little bit about you, who reports to you. LinkedIn will tell them that. And then they can craft a message that goes specifically to you. I have a story to tell, but I can't remember if it's here or, no, it's not here. This is a video on what spear phishing is and why you can be the victim. Set your birthday on Facebook to the day before your actual birthday.
I don't post any of that because.
I love that stuff. I mean, come on, we're human. We want people to like us, and other people wishing we had your birthday. It's like, all right, here's the story. This will show you, this is kind of a tie in between spear phishing and social media. Why social media? Too much information you post on LinkedIn can bite you in the butt. True story. It was in the annual report at the end of 2020 of a big cybersecurity company, and proving what the risk is and how good they are. So here we have a woman who was promoted to senior vice president at a regional bank, and she posted it, as we do, on LinkedIn for people to congratulate her on her new position. And isn't that great? And she was flooded with all kinds of best wishes. Her profile was set to public so anyone could see it. All right, so now the bad guy sitting over here in the corner notices that she's been promoted. That means that she probably has access to a whole bunch of bank information. Now that she's on this higher level within the organization, she's got clearance for more sensitive, cool stuff. So, by the way, it's very easy to find your email address. I do it all the time. You can just do it. I paid money to do it because it's part of my business, but you can find out her email address with absolutely no problem. Well, that means that with just a little bit of digging, you can go over to Facebook and find out what's her deal. And her deal was that she had a son who played for the high school football team in the city. And so the hacker went to the high school website, found the name of the football coach, put together an email that looked like it came from the coach, from the high school, and sent her at her bank email address, so she would open it on her bank computer, laptop, sent her a message from the coach saying, important schedule change, football practice schedule changes beginning next week. Please download this PDF, shows you the upcoming. And she opened it and immediately gave the hackers access to the sensitive information on her computer. So that's why you don't, if you're controlling a lot of money, even if you're not controlling a lot of money, it can be worth the time to go to that trouble.
Is it a mistake that media operations, when they have a Facebook operation, a Facebook page rather, I'm going to show my ignorance.
Yeah, no,
Bright
no
color.
such thing.
You want everybody to see it, not just your friends. So what you're suggesting is, here's where I'm running into trouble asking the question, that listeners, viewers, you friend all of those people who ask to be friended, and then how does this said only friends on social media?
That's for you.
Your personal Facebook account.
Yeah, not the station.
Not the station.
The station's Facebook page
Yes,
is,
yeah, no,
that's, no, there is no dumb question here at all. You want as many, obviously, for your station's Facebook page as you can get, because that's free, back and forth communication, powerful tool. You want it, you love it. What you want to do is prevent people who are not friends with Sanders from seeing Sanders' Facebook page. That's in Facebook preferences. And occasionally Facebook, being the evil giant that it is, will change the preferences that you have set when it releases a new version. It'll reset everything. So you gotta keep tabs on this. But in LinkedIn and in Facebook, don't accept invitations from people you don't know. And set your accounts to only friends consent. Now, as for your station, all bets are off. Don't put your Ford dealer has bought us because we're so good, whatever. Make that promotional, and that's how that works. The email I got driving down here today was legit from Facebook, and it said, here is your code to change your Facebook password, which means somebody identified me and tried to, but I'm set up to two-factor authentication, buddy, and that's how life should be. And I checked the from address, and it was Facebook, and then I alerted Facebook that I had not requested a change. My passwords are 15 characters. I use a password manager. That's what you really want. That's what you want. You want that. You want a password manager. Buy a password manager, because we just aren't wired to keep track of 15-digit passwords for 130 different online accounts. It was hackable. One of the main password manager programs was hacked, but it did not get to any user. No, we're good.
Do you think Barracuda type systems are worth it? Okay, our company tries to do a lot to protect against cyber attacks. But I'm constantly reminding my employees, don't open emails. I get them and I delete them. And I'm starting to see the pattern, but I don't think that I think they're much more trusting.
Sure.
And if I don't, as soon as I see one that I know has got out pretty much probably to everyone, I just warn them, if you see something like this, don't open it. Because I think they do overshare on social media, and I think they're exactly what you're saying. It's like a quick route in.
They share passwords too, and it's not because they're evil, it's because they're trying to get work done fast.
Yeah.
And when it comes to opening emails and downloading attachments, it could be a tip from somebody, news department's about this. And that's going to take technology to protect you, but it also takes awareness. And there's a slide here about.
How do you think this Sinclair attack happened? Do they know yet?
It was Russian, we know that. So nation state and highly organized, highly effective, and all I had to do was find a weak link. It could have been a phishing email.
The fact that it was kind of like different in different areas was interesting to me too.
And didn't get to the main corporate.
Yeah.
It was regional, which I don't know. I mean, it's possible that those hubs were hacked as opposed to, the mothership.
And they have different firewalls on each hub or something?
Because they were done through acquisition. And so different, they may not have had time or money or intention to standardize on everything.
That makes sense.
My biggest fear is the very hungry salesman who is going to look at every email that he sees because, someone wants to make a sale.
Right.
Your first business is sales. However, if you open every email, you are so susceptible to everything that's out there too.
So, that requires some degree of being a detective on the part of every employee, and that's why there could have many of the other ones. This is a great business to be in. The technology is effective, and there are lots of options. It's expensive. I heard that from the Rome guy who told me yesterday that Brown College pays $50,000 a quarter for technology to protect students from bad email. And you have to, this is another thing that I heard yesterday from a broadcaster, that you want to work here, you got to put this software on your phone. VMware, which is not too far from here, headquarters of VMware, what they do is they sandbox. So what that means is there's a section on your phone that's walled off from everything else, where all of your work-related material goes. And it's super protected, and you're not gonna, nothing resides on the phone, it's all aliases. And the advantage to that, this gets back into the employees who are doing bad things intentionally. When an employee leaves, all the IT guy has to do is say, delete, and everything, all access, everything comes off the phone. So that's an example of one way to treat this stuff, is taking as much control as you can get. Ransomware, of course, Cox, as we talked about, the Sinclair deal a week ago today. Ransomware is going crazy because they figured it out. They figured out how much money is involved with it. It's insanely profitable to do this. And there are still weak links in these chains that the companies have got to fix to prevent being a victim of it. 2/3 of all organizations in the United States have been attacked, some of them successfully, some not. But this is big stuff. Colonial Pipeline was the one that got so much press over the summer. Cities, counties, hospitals, police departments. City of Atlanta was absolutely obliterated with it. But the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer for the City of Atlanta, had purchased cybersecurity insurance that went into effect the day before. Oh! And they got, the insurance company tried to fight it, but there was no way, and they had to pay. So financially, the city was able to suffer less of pain than they would have otherwise, but it was still just a mess. And it comes from lack of attention, lack of culture, lack of investment.
Can I ask you, when they pay the ransom and they do whatever they do or are told to do, how does that not make them vulnerable anymore? That would seem to be...
Great question, and they are far more vulnerable before, coming after that.
Yeah.
because word gets out, they pay.
Yes.
And half of the time they pay, they don't get the keys to unlock.
They're shutting down completely.
They're shut, you paid the money, you paid X, and you're out X, and you're out your data. So Sinclair, this headline on the upper left is from last night. So it's still, a week later, causing massive havoc. I mean, I've heard horror stories about not being able to run spots and take in spots or send out spots or, anything. I mean, it's the heart of the company. And without knowing specifics, except that we know it's Russian, that's a cultural problem. That is a cultural problem that you as a manager are in a position to address by giving your IT team credibility and air and money and listening carefully to them or to the home office, assuming that the home office has got religion on this too. So ransomware, and this is kind of a 30,000 foot view, but here is what ransomware is. So tell your story about your log.
Oh, when Marketron got hacked?
Yeah.
Marketron got hacked. We use RT, which is one of their products, but RT, that product was not hacked. They shut everything down. So we were sitting there without the ability to schedule commercials, with no logs for the next day. What do you do? Fortunately, when we get a log and ingest it to bring it, merge it into automation, it actually comes to us after we get it out of the cloud in a notepad form in just text form. So we can then manipulate that document to recreate logs. So we were able to get a log for the next day and deal with the billing later. But they cut it back on by 5 or 5:30 that evening, so we were able to actually generate the correct log. They just
What'd you have to do? You had to copy paste?
Yeah, we'd copy paste, and what I did was, because it was a Monday going into a Tuesday, I said, well, we have certain commercials that run live on Tuesday that don't run on Monday. I said, go last Tuesday, find those live guys on, and paste them over the Monday live guys, and then just save it as, and then you can merge it. And that's what we did as a backup. Fortunately, they got it back up. But only part of Marketron's products were hacked. Ours wasn't, but they shut everything down just to be safe.
Right.
Which, it's cloud-based, but once they got it back up, I still kind of wake up in the middle of the night, going, okay, is it going to work today? Because you don't know.
We were down for 8 straight days because we really can't do that every night.
Which Marketron product are you using? The big VT or the big product? Yeah. We used to do the bitty one.
Yeah, well, we have no business having that, but that's a whole different story.
So what was the net result? Were you able to?
We wound up getting back up, but, so Marketron, they took groups, like I guess, markets and restored theirs over a period of maybe 72 hours until they got us back where they were.
Man, you know Marketron was not a happy place to be.
Oh, I'm telling you, I felt sorry for them in a way, because I mean, they got thousands of radio stations out there, if not hundreds. And,
And I had heard that Marketron had just gotten through rolling out an entire new layer of security, just literally weeks before it happened.
And it didn't just affect Marketron, it affected Mr. Master and AIM,
Yep.
Synchronicity, all the other.
We have Mr.
ad
Master, we
distributors,
couldn't get our-
they all couldn't get their stuff. So, I mean, it trickled everywhere.
Well, I had somebody come up to me yesterday and say, we went to the cloud. We went to the cloud, so now we're safe. He's he said that's how we thought of it when we went to the cloud. The cloud, taking all your hard drives and all of that data off premises so that you hand it to Microsoft or Google or Amazon or whatever, as if.
You're on that.
They won't get happy.
They're big. They're
They're a bigger target.
all they are is taking your hard drives and you're renting the hard drives from them. You have to be sharp enough to come up with your own solution. Plenty of solutions, but just because you went to the cloud doesn't mean that you're now.
The only advantage really for us going with the cloud-based system on traffic was we could do it from anywhere.
Right.
We never thought of it as security, we just thought we could do it from anywhere, but we back everything up.
And the problem, backing up is good. One of the things that some cybersecurity people do who are really serious about it is air gap their backups, which is a fancy way of saying they disconnect the hard drive and put it in the closet and put another hard drive in. The reason being that this is becoming more and more, you'll hear more and more about this with ransomware. It'll be on your system for months before.
Accidentally did it, before it getting worse, was it your backup in the closet, and that's what saved you guys?
Yeah. Yeah,
we're on Marketron, and we were down for 3 days, copying the logs over and adding in the new spots manually, and yeah, that's what we did. We had, Marketron though, that's really basically all we did, because we were already on a secondary server because we got hacked back in January of. Howard Tool works there? Yeah, Howard. How about that? Okay. So we had a smaller server that we had already migrated to. So we were already halfway there. Yeah, with Marketron, we were down for 3 days, copying our logs and making sure all the spots. It's touching the stove, you're now, there's no way to avoid being concerned about it. Well, we got about 15 minutes left, so focus on, so now hopefully you realize the scope, breadth, expense of this problem.
You scared the crap out of all of us.
Well, and then that's good.
Here's the cookie.
Just exactly. I think a teddy bear.
So what can you do? And the bad news is management's really the one that's got to take the lead here. It can't get pushed up from below. And depending on the assets that you have to work with, it really doesn't matter. It just has to be, you're under so much pressure right now. I mean, revenue pressure and competition for new platforms and you name it, you know better than I do. But you got to add this to the list. And it's got to be a priority because the alternative is all the other stuff goes away. So, since you have so many things you got to worry about, what's the priority? I mean, this can be overwhelming because there are so many ways you can get hurt. What's the most important thing? And I don't know what that is, but define that for yourself and start there. If you're not happy, if you're not confident with all of the elements of your broadcast operation, you don't know what do I even do to protect all this stuff? You know what? You're not going to protect all this stuff ever. Everything is hackable. The Department of Defense is hackable. So use the 80-20 rule. Pick the priority at your station that you want to protect first. and go from there. If you know, talk to the different departments. I would imagine each department feels that they are the most important. Engineers, technical people, you know, probably we're talking to your news people about what's their takeaway if they cover any of this.
Does it take just one point, or do you have to really take down a system? In other words, if one person does it, that's enough?
It can be, depending on the protections that you have in place. And you have to assume that somebody is going to click, probably the GM. So, you know, and that comes down to limiting, you know, what used to be the Wild West. I work here, I gotta have access to this thing because I might need it someday. Well, the big trend now is zero trust, which means the only people in your organization that have access to this system are the ones who absolutely have to have it. And when they leave, I've been a victim of this, where people left and I did not have control over their computer, their laptops. I learned you got to be able to brick that laptop if they leave under bad circumstances. So this is a very important part of the overall strategy. Have a written cyber policy. You need this for two reasons. The first reason is that everybody has to know what the rules are. The rules could be you cannot post on anything about your job on Facebook or LinkedIn. It's cause for dismissal. You cannot do it. It can be, we're going to put this software on your phone. If you want to work here, we acknowledge it's your equipment, but freedom has limits, liberty has limits, and they start with your phone. No using software you like instead of the software we provide you. That would be file transfer services like Box, Dropbox, because your Dropbox is going to have stricter protocols on it than the one that they use. The other reason they were in cyber policy is because it forces you to deal with this. It forces you to think of what are some of the things that could happen. This may be something that broadcasting associations have, a repository for this sort of thing to give you a head start. But even if you don't have a head start, make it brief, readable, not legal. Your lawyer's going to want to make it legal. Make it English and understandable and clear, but have it as a written policy that is updated every year as part of an onboard. Get cyber insurance, but know what you're buying. You know, just as we were talking about Ralph Pasquarello's feedback to me, you know, the number of clients he has who say, well, we're fine, we got $1 million in cyber insurance, and you know, he says, well, how much do you bill? And how long will $1 million, assuming you get $1 million, how long is that gonna take you? And then we get into my bailiwick, which is employees.
Is that cyber insurance used to pay off the ransom, or is it used to recover?
It's used to pay you.
It's all recovery, right? So there's no insurance to pay off the ransom.
That's why the FBI says don't pay.
Right.
And many people do
Pay anyway, right?
Because hospitals who don't, you know, they're like broadcast, you know, even more so.
Yep.
In terms of urgency, they can't be down.
Right.
But your workforce, and this is where I really enjoyed learning about this, how employees view the internet. The good news is employees are getting smarter about this. And they're smarter because they're at risk at home, their kids are at risk. So you're not trying to create urgency that doesn't exist. They get it. The main takeaway is you've got to keep doing it. Half the companies in this country train their employees in cybersecurity once a year, and it's forgotten by dinner time. So that's why my newsletter is twice a month. That was one of the first decisions I had to make. How often do you do this? Once a week's too much, probably in their face too much. Once a month, they forget. So I do first and the 15th. But you've got to make it an ongoing part of your strategy. And the best you can hope for is that it is a buzzing noise in the heads of your employees, most of them. hey, maybe that email isn't right, because they keep pounding that into me that it looks urgent and real, but it's not. So the most thing you can hope for, and it's a good thing, it's enough, is that this becomes a buzzing noise. But you have to use a carrot. You have to make employees want to read this stuff. You can't make it a stick. If you don't read it, we're going to punish you. Employees use two-factor authentication at the office. Encourage them to do it at home. They should be running security software. It's more important on Android phones than on iPhones. They should be using it even if they have a Mac. Certainly Windows should do it. Chromebook, not as much, because Chromebook's operating system is all controlled by Google, so it's not stored in the way that the other OSs do, but still. Only approved software. AT&T was a big client when we were at What's Up. We did videos for them, 40 videos a month for AT&T. AT&T is the bastion of cybersecurity. You can't do anything to get into the AT&T system, except when we had to send the videos that we produced over to AT&T for approval, their archaic file transfer software, employees stopped using it because it was so bad. So what does my client say? Just send it to my personal Dropbox.
Right.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, you got, part of your cybersecurity policy is you can't use your favorite platform just because it's going to save you time and be easier. Ours is more secure. And long passwords. What is a long password? Very best password is a password manager. Pay the $40 a year and get that software. This will put it all into perspective. Hackers use automation to crack passwords, so they're not sitting there trying to guess randomly. This chart shows you, using the password cracking software, how long does it take a bad guy to figure out what your password is? And this will change the way you think about passwords. The further down is the more characters, the longer the password is, so the further down. And then the further to the right is the more complicated numbers, symbols, so forth. So what you want is to be as far down to the right as you feel comfortable doing. Generally 15 characters. My first dog was Spot with an exclamation point in the middle of it. Only used for that one website. If you insist on not using a password manager that, by the way, takes all this away and hands it for you. But most of the passwords can be guessed with these computers instantly. And that's the back door into your station.
Do you like the suggested passwords? Like
You can do that. Now, the difficult, the kind of hassle thing, that's free. You know, that's Google, that's Apple, that's, you know, whatever, Gmail, whatever. Those are always good passwords. And your OS will manage it for you. The problem comes if you use Google and Chrome, or if you use Chrome and Safari, or if you use, you know, Windows and then you go home and you want to use your Mac. They don't play well together. So if you're a purist, if you use Macintosh, Safari, that's all you do. Okay, yeah, I would do that. You want to communicate with your employees? A lot of folks say my employees get too much email. I want to put it on the intranet because I want them to be plugged into what's important to the company. Yeah, okay. Even if you're giving away money, people don't go to the intranet. So email is the way to communicate best with your workforce. We get 85% open rates when management sends an email to employees. You think it'd be 100, but it's not. So we've talked about personal apps. We talked about posting work photos on social media, and here's one for your promotion department. A very dangerous way for hackers, bad guys to do things on your behalf is if you bought a URL, web address for a contest, and you let it lapse, and it's got your brand name on it, and you used it, they're going to buy it, and they're going to send out emails and make posts and all that sort of thing in your name, and you can't get it back. The average Fortune 500 company has more than 5,000 URLs that they are not using. So be careful. You know, have a URL for your contests, or if it's, essentially once you buy it, you gotta have it forever. So be careful. Think about that. Okay, this last quick story about why this is a long-term play. When you go into Chick-fil-A and you order something and you hand them the money and they hand you the change and then you say thank you and then they say, it took years to get to that point. It was Drew Cathy's idea. He announced it, unveiled it at one of the Chick-fil-A owner-operator conventions. We're going to start doing this. It's important for our culture. We want to be remembered this way. We don't want you to say no problem. So a year later, he comes back and he said, I said a year ago, my pleasure. A year later, I said my pleasure. And it took 5 years before it had been ingrained in the culture for my pleasure, which you all know what it is. You're an end user, you're keyed in, it's part of the Chick-fil-A culture. You've got to commit to this as much as you're committed to revenue, to protect your most important business asset. So that's me, that's Aware Force. And if you got any questions, I think we did it. We're 2 minutes over. Network news is on.
Nice. Can I say amen?
Do what?
Can I say amen?
Amen.
That's probably from Salem Networks. But we were hacked 15 months ago. They came in through an outdated software in Cleveland. That's how they got in. So you had that. Watch the software. Prior to that, new employees all got cybersecurity training. They came on board. And every year we had one nice refresher course. It was all great. Oh yeah, they fooled us on the thing work on. And so we didn't protect our software, we didn't train ourselves, our entire staff. And now the training is relentless. I get calls at night at home saying, hey, I just got an email from HR and they want to meet tomorrow at 4:30. Is my job okay? And it's like you were just spoofed by our internal guys who were trying to catch you. Mm-hmm. All the time. We have emails going out from our CEO who's spoofing everybody. Yeah. Hey, give me a call and you discuss so-and-so. Here's an invite for the meeting. And it's like, I got a call from Ed about a meeting. No, you're being spoofed. Good job. So it's a constant every day because we think we got it covered every few months. This is awesome. You're on.
Great story. It's good to hear that you're relentless. As much as that is a serious pain to be dealing with that, the effective, and I say this with Aware Force, you can go from 100 days to same day. Of course, that as soon as you're alerted, that means that you're ahead of the game or you're tied, as opposed to 100 days. So yeah, it's a pain, but boy, is it good.
Well, we all experienced about 7 weeks of hell when we were attacked. And so we kind of bring everyone was on board. And so like, ooh, I remember that, I won't do that. So that also means that.
I'm at the other end of the rainbow. We're a mom and pop, pretty much literally, a two-person ownership company. We have 2 stations and an online newspaper. We watched everything happen around us. We just upgraded our antivirus. We're going to East. We've got, we just upgraded our firewall. We're taking some steps. We take an external hard drive or an external flash drive backup of our traffic system. That goes home with our traffic manager every day. So we have an offsite. Weekly, I have a 5 terabyte drive I put on our server, and I take that home every Friday. However, I am terrified that one of our go-getters is going to click on an email, or we do so much social stuff that someone's going to come in the other side.
Right.
When do we get to that point to where I'm not nagging you? This is because I want to have a job next week, and I don't want this place to have to be sold for scrap.
This with us, it is every week or two, I get an email from IT saying, we've got 40 people here in Atlanta, and it'll be, these 2 people failed. They didn't, it was sent out to 12, but 2 still failed. And they get extra training. And so it's like, I don't care. Because and we joke about it. It's like, yeah, they went after it. And because guys don't remember that pain we had. When you experience it, it's like opening up that, it's just everyone's like, shoot, they take it very personally. You know what I mean? And so I think it's almost not, you do twice a month of training. I think that's a minimum.
Yeah.
You're talking about it all the time. It's important. How many staff you got? 3, you said?
Oh, no, we're 2-person ownership.
Oh, okay.
We probably full-time, a dozen with another,
all the time.
half dozen stringers and people that, part-time wandering in and out.
I think all the time. I'm just like those numbers are awesome. Never saw that before. The forgetting.
Yeah.
You just forget. I mean, it's just like you're gonna forget.
Well,
They're working.
they're trying to do a good job fast. Your advantage is that your footprint is, your attack surface is much smaller than Gray. And Gray's about to take over the world. Your footprint is, almost unmanageable. And the most dangerous of all is when you're doing acquisitions, because you don't know what systems are ingrained and in place and out of date because they were going to sell, they didn't invest in it. So it's you both got challenges. You're both looking at it. It both matters. You just have different frameworks of.
I have a question about the URLs. I was sent from our attorney, which is an email asking if we wanted to renew something. It was actually the domain name, that's different. But
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, anyway, it was something we haven't used for years,
Yeah.
and she said, and I said, well, I'd like to renew it so no one else can have it.
Yeah.
And she said, well, if you're not using it actively, you can't renew it.
No, it's not true.
No, it's not true.
Don't take your money, I don't care what they do with it. It's like buying a car and parking in the garage out there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
That's how squatting started.
Right, exactly.
Well, the point is, be careful when you make this commitment because it's forever.
Yeah.
That's not saying you shouldn't use URLs as promotional vehicles or news tips or whatever.
Yeah.
But once you own it,
Right.
you own it.
Yeah.
Pay the $30 or
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
What does cybersecurity insurance typically cost? I know how critical it is. I'm not quibbling.
It's like, that was like asking me, well, how much does it cost for us to hire you to do a video? And I was like, well, it could be, I could shoot it on my iPhone, or I could bring in Steven Spielberg. It depends on the value of what you're trying to protect, what you have in place to protect it, and the rates are 40% higher than they were January 1st, so it costs more than it did in December.
And you buy this from whoever it is who you cover your business with anyway, or
You could,
several firms that do.
The reason I like to talk to Ralph is because Ralph does that, and he's a broker, so he's not representing whoever. They all sell it. It's all now a major part of the business. His point to me, he sent me an email and we talked on the phone over and over. He said, these people need to understand what they're buying. Because it's so easy to feel like, well, we're paying all this money and we have this number of millions of dollars of protection, so we're good. And then they get hacked and they didn't have two-factor authentication, so they don't get any money. So you really have to understand what it is you're buying.
Can you ever buy enough to be protected fully against, let's say, Sinclair's losses, $20 million? Can they get paid that back?
Sure, if, can you ever, that's kind of like a two-ended question. Will the insurance company ever sell you enough, to cover that? Sure, you just gonna pay, a lot for it.
How big a premium from that?
Yeah.
Right, sure.
I think my question to you though is, in a situation like you have, how do people know when they're getting a legitimate email from within the company if they question every email? If they have to call you every night and going, yeah, that's a legitimate email. So how do you code that so that they can tell what's
Well, you can, it'll look like it's a real address, and it's really good. It's like, one from our CEO, yeah, that's it.
Right.
And you're like, whoa.
Which you sent, or they sent.
Which IT sent.
IT sends?
And so, yeah, you got to hover over and he's like, you get a weird email. The CEO never call you and want to talk about something. It's kind of weird. So just all you do is stop instead of go, ooh, that call me. Right? You just hover over that return address and like, anyway. Or just don't respond at all. Only call me, you're asking, whatever. And so it's just be present, be aware.
Yeah, and I was just curious as to how, because if you question that's the problem that the hackers have created. Now you question everything you read on the internet. You question everything in social media. You question everything you get from the people within your own business. So pretty soon you're so paranoid, nothing is.
Yeah. Well, it's not holding us up in that regard, but they're just like a lot of staff meeting or a sales meeting, or someone will say, hey, did you get that email from HR? Tell us we're going to get fired. And it's like, yeah, joke about it. And it's like, yeah, we all got those. Or some did, some didn't. That's the thing too. Half the staff does. So it hasn't gotten in the way. I think what this is interesting. I wondered as well, is this really going to screw people's heads up? And it just I think it's just making more people more present, more aware.
Do we have more people coming in?
No.
Sorry.
Can I say one thing? I've been asked about that. Are you trying to make us paranoid? No, it's not.